got a tea because I had a yawn.
Hello, team, and welcome back to Sparks Conversation. I am joined not by Rowan today, but we've got Gem back on the podcast. So Gem was one of obviously I started the podcast a long time ago, and then it kind of went into hibernation for a little bit because nobody listened and nobody cared about me. But now people care about me and people listen. So Gem was on early on in the series, and we were quite close. We had literally just come out of our preps then, but Gem is the head coach at Coached by Gem, which is online coaching service, and she does in-person PT. She has the fun of that. So introduce yourself, Gem. Like, how are you? How are you since the last podcast? Because that seems like a long time ago now.
Yeah, it does feel like a long time ago actually now. I think it was a good probably 6 weeks or so back. So I think a lot has changed since last time we spoke. And
We've all got chubbier faces.
Yeah, all rounder faces to start off with. Oh my God, go back and compare it. But now that we're a few weeks on, and I think those last few weeks of kind of the recovery phase from prep and moving that into the transition for the off season, like a lot changes in that period of time, like whether it's like training and like also how you feel, your energy levels. Like I think things will be quite significantly different now compared to like the last time we spoke.
100%, yeah. And like you said about the recovery phase, like I was probably about 3 or 4 weeks into my recovery phase, and at that time it wasn't going that well, let's be honest. Like I had my digestive issues, I had some other issues going on, life stress. But for me personally, like have I officially come out of my recovery phase?
Yeah.
Like, that's a question for another day.
That is the question.
That is the question that everyone wants to know. But in theory, I have. So I ran a recovery phase for kind of like 6 to 8 weeks where I took it really easy. Well, I say I took it really easy. I tried to take it easy. Like it took a lot longer than I would have liked and wanted it to start to somewhat feel normal. I don't know if you had the same thing. I know you had I don't know if it was because of my digestive issues that we had a slightly different approach, because I do seem to remember like your calories went high quite quick.
Quite fast. And I think you probably not out of your choice, but you had to take it much, much slower. And I think because of the digestive issues you were having as well, you were really limited on like your variety of what you could actually eat, even if you wanted to.
Yeah. Just gotta have fish and a rice cake every day. You've hit the nail on the head. Like, so what did you bump your calories up to straight away? Can you remember?
Like my calories actually haven't changed this whole duration of the time that I think since we last spoke. So mine went pretty much straight to 2,900, like straight away. Luxury. And with that, my weight has obviously slowly crept up. It's now started to stabilize since Christmas, to be fair. And I do feel like so much better on myself. And I know myself quite well. And I know that I need to be above 60 kilos to be what I would say would like quote unquote like optimal.
Yeah.
Any lighter than that, and I still feel like the remnants of being in like a deficit.
Yeah.
But I'm very much feeling more myself now than I think when we last spoke. And the last few weeks have definitely made a massive difference, although I am deloading at the moment, but we're coming to the back end of that.
Is that your first deload since your training cycle after prep? Yeah. So you've lasted quite a long time actually, like fair play.
Yeah. So the thing is that after we came out of prep, like the volume in training, we did slowly taper up. So I probably didn't hit like what would be full volume until like maybe 4 weeks ago or so. Until then, it was still a process of kind of slowly adding it back in. So I think that's why at this point we're taking a bit of a step back, because we're just slowly showing signs of fatigue. We just want to nip it in the bud a little bit.
Yeah, and that's important, because the mentality now is like, you're like, I'm growing, I want to grow. And you've got to understand and appreciate that like we aren't in a position to grow, like we said in the last podcast. And we really not, I know you probably, like you said, the fatigue, you feel it like straight away. The minute I started training to like relative intensity, like I still don't think it's all relative to what you've performed at before. That's what I think. So like I'm nowhere near what I've performed at before, but relative to where I am now, like my intensity is in a good place finally, but it's taking a lot to recover from that. And I mean, I don't know if your training's the same, but leg days are a struggle. Like the next day, like I'm getting like almost like noob DOMs still.
You don't.
Yeah, just like I've never had any time in a hack squat, and I'm just absolutely battered. But I took a deload. Well, I initially took a D volume straight after the show. So the week after my show, when I was in Ibiza, I did like a D volume just to keep things ticking over. It wasn't ideal because I was doing about like 16,000 steps a day. So I wouldn't necessarily class that as like a D volume. And then when I came back, I literally just came in at like 4 RER. Like I tried to just really take it slow and then build back up to my relative intensity, like I said. And then I think it's only since my first deload, which was about 8 or 9 weeks post show, that I have pushed intensity and felt that I could. And I accredit that to, like you said, when my body weight got to a point where I'd actually put on enough body fat to build that intensity. Because I can think about it now, like those weeks post show, that first training cycle, I really wasn't stable, like in any form, like pressing, like core stability. And I don't know why that was. Maybe it's just general like systemic fatigue, which I think it probably was. But I really struggled with the stability. And as I've kind of creeped up to around 10% of body weight increase, which I've read quite a lot about and listened to quite a few podcasts from people way more knowledgeable than me. People say like the 10% mark's like quite good. So if I'm saying like I'm like an average, like normally I'm 100 kilograms, like quite happily. So I'm looking to gain around 10 kilograms before I'd feel normal and train well.
Yeah.
And then now I need to focus on kind of actually getting my calories up, because I'm still only on like 3,300 calories, which isn't that much food. But the problem is like I am gaining weight on that. So that's the sad reality of my life. Like if you are gaining weight on a certain calorie amount, you don't like, what's the word? Like big yourself up. You don't need more food. Like just ride it out. But yeah, it's interesting that you're still on the same calories that you were straight out of prep. And I think that will have like played massively into your ability to recover quite quickly. Because I know you said, was it over 60 kilograms you feel like you perform your best?
Yeah, always. And that's always been the case. Whenever I've dipped below 60 and then we push things back up again, I don't know what it is about that kind of 60 kilo mark. Like that's where I always feel like I feel much more normal again. And like almost even my satiety and hunger cues start to subside like a little bit, because I know you probably would have felt the same, probably up until this point now, where
if you're going to ask me if I'm still hungry, I'm still
starving.
hungry.
Yeah, you're starving. And then I hit that 60 kilo mark and I feel like things just start to taper off a little bit. So at that point where my recovery capabilities were much better and I knew that I could go into training with some decent kind of intensity, then we could actually start adding in like a little bit of cardio for fitness, because that was totally, we didn't do any cardio really up until, I can't remember how many weeks post show it was, but then we started to add that back in as my body was able to recover from it, just to make sure I stay on top fitness wise. And it's weird because I remember back now, I think back at it, and I think exactly the same thing as you were describing with the stability. When I'm lighter, when you're just generally lighter, you just cannot create that same sense. You don't even feel safe, like some lift.
I was just like,
you just feel so brittle.
Yeah, I just felt like whenever I used to get on the hack squat, I just put a belt on and I just feel like I was putting like a little plaster on like the Grand Canyon and just trying to like, cover this like instability by a fabric belt. And I was just like, if it makes me feel better, like it makes me feel better. But yeah, I think what I've found now is like, this is the first, so I'm in my second training block since prep, and like, I love training again now, like really do. I did lose a bit of a love for it, or I lost that kind of, because performance is so important. When you're not performing at your best, like it's very hard to get almost motivated. Like I would do it because I'm disciplined, but like that absolute love and that absolute like relentless nature to your execution and your programming. I mean, I coach myself because I needed to have control after prep. You have a coach, which is super, like, I think super beneficial for you. And I've just really fallen back in love with training now that I can actually train like how I want to train.
You feel like you can, yeah.
But I've actually, like, I don't know if you've heard of like a volume escalation method. So I've like adopted like a volume escalation method to my training box at the moment, which is basically my programming is like specialized to what I need to improve from my shows. So for me personally, that's kind of like my lats, because I think my posterior chain for a tall guy is okay. It's just my lats from the back and from the front are not there. My chest is weak and my arms are just long. So I just need more arm. In this training block now, I'm running like a specialization block. So there was a higher frequency for all of those muscle groups. So I'm training them like twice, sometimes 3 times a week. But on this volume escalation method, I hit baseline volume at the start of the training block, and then as I progress through the training block and strength starts to plateau, I'll then escalate volume through the additional set or 2 or an additional intensity technique. And I think, like, if anyone's seen my Instagram, I'm going to blow my own trumpet here. Like, I think I've blown up a little bit. Like, I think I've surpassed my physique that I've had through like previous off seasons, and I'm like at least like 10 kilograms lighter, which is weird because it can't be muscle. I just think potentially I did need, or still do need, like a slightly higher volume approach, which is, it's hard for me to say because I'm very much like blood, sweat and tears, like balls to the wall, kill yourself on the hack squat. But if I like, and this is the thing, like this is where my thinking might have changed. Like if I get a good response from something, I'm going to do it again. And I have had a good response from this approach. So I'm going to do it again and see what happens, because if I can grow from 3 sets, that might be better than 2 sets. Like, so it's quite an interesting like thought process shift for me. I don't know, how's your programming at the moment, like in terms of your program?
I would actually say like similar in a way, because I think as coaches as well, you're always looking to develop and trying to keep an open mind, aren't you? So you can't kind of get yourself stuck into one box and like one opinion. Exactly. When you try something else, and just like, actually, you know what, this is working quite well. Why don't we just try and run this? If it's working, then why would we change anything again? So for me, like my sets do vary between like 2 and 3 sets now, actually, whereas maybe previously I would have totally just been at 2. Like I would have rarely ever seen 3. But now that it is kind of going more to the 2 to 3, maybe with an intensifier off the back of the last set, and my body's responding really well to that. Like I know that I am a fair bit heavier now, but I am heavier, but with much more density on my lower body, which is what I needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Than I've ever really seen before.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, I think, I was going to say something really important then. And I also think like this ties into where I was personally following prep. Like my accuracy was not there to be just doing 2 sets. And I'll be the first to say that. Like I said, like I wasn't stable, head was all over the place. Like if I was doing 2 sets, probably 5 of those reps would be good, like over those 2 sets. So is that going to give me like a good stimulus or enough of a stimulus? Probably not. So I almost like cut myself some slack and said, right, let's have another set here. So if you feel like that first set wasn't good enough by your own standards, you have another opportunity to just experience weight on your back again, or weight over your body again, or you can learn to move again, which was a big thing for me, because I do think like I struggled just prep is just so like, you're just so lethargic, like, and then to get that spring back and get that ability to execute how you want to was really important to me. And I think like increasing total volume through sets and kind of approaches like that has really enabled me to do so. But yeah, I think being open-minded is absolutely key there. So you've got some clients competing next year, haven't you? So I'm looking forward to that. Like I follow all of them. I've been bigging them up and giving them some support. So how are you thinking of approaching that with them? If you don't mind me asking.
So in general, like both of them are in kind of different phases at the moment, because they're doing different shows. So I've got one that's competing towards the front end of the year and another one that will compete towards the back end of the year. So one of them's just gone into prep, and the other one's still in her growing phase, where we're just trying to get as much muscle on her without sacrificing like body composition, like up until the point where she starts prep in April. The approach for both of them is going to be different because their starting points are different. So for the girl who is competing like in May, so she's already started prep, but we're going to push her a little bit harder towards the beginning. And then we're probably going to implement things like diet breaks and a couple of refeeds in the middle if we can afford to do so. But the main thing is I want to get her ahead earlier, like sooner rather than later. And that would generally be the approach that I want to take for the both of them. But I just think it just mitigates the stress like down the line where you feel like, oh, like, are you going to be ready? You're not going to be ready. Also, they're doing different federations, so the criteria is going to be different.
Interesting. Same categories.
Same categories. So one of them is at Body Power Expo. So that will be more like a fitness modeling kind of competition. The other one will be with Two Bros.
Nice.
So the May show is going to be much more about that overall kind of aesthetic look versus trying to get extremely shredded. Whereas as we know, like the criteria for Two Bros is much more specific. And that's gonna require some graft to really hit the conditioning spot on.
I think they're both in a good place actually, like following both of them, like, and I see you share them on your Instagram and stuff. I think they're both in a really good place. Like one, like you said, one started prep, and I can see from the cardio stories, but I think both got good potential. And I think, like, realistically, like you said, the best thing you can do is hit the ground running as fast as you can. Not right. I say as fast as you can, like as fast as you can get away with it without it being detrimental to everything else. Because there's a fine line between going too fast at the front and then that then fucks you up for the end of prep, or you do it close to the wire and then you're ahead. And like you said, because stress goes up naturally during a prep, like as you get close to the show, like sleep goes out the window, like you're not sleeping well. All you're thinking about is like how you look, like your daily tasks, the things you need to do, because as you get close to prep, the day of the end of prep, like your daily tasks just go up. Like you've got to do your steps, you've got to eat your meals bang on the time, you've got to pose. Like posing takes up a lot of time, and your bandwidth for understanding, or bandwidth for like being able to like host all of these things goes down. So I think getting ahead for both of those women, will be really beneficial. And I'm super excited to see what they can kind of bring to the table. And I mean, it's great that you've got them. I think it's a big thing that I've worked on with my clients at the moment, is like setting goals that actually really do like challenge you as an athlete. And I kind of speak to all of my clients as if with the term athlete, because I think it creates that mindset shift from just being someone who just goes to the gym and like, I do legs, bums and tums. Do you know what I mean? Or I do like a shredded core class.
You have to have that mindset shift. If you're thinking about competing, and this is a conversation I've had with the both of them, if you're thinking about competing, then you need to have that mindset. Because you're not going to get everything done. Like it's hard craft. You need to make sure that everything is in its place, like really before you even consider to do it. And just have that awareness that it is going to be difficult, and they do need to treat themselves like athletes, because that is essentially what they become when you start prep.
Yeah, exactly. And I think on reflection of prep, like I think I developed that kind of mindset. I had it before in my gaining phase. Like I've always viewed like my training time as like, you used to, like, we didn't even speak for like years, and I'd been at Fitness First for like years. Do you know what I mean? Like I just literally made no friends down there. I just put my headphones in and trained, because I viewed that time as like me as an athlete, even though I wasn't competing at the time or doing anything to do with fitness. I was actually teaching at the time. I'm an athlete for these like hour and a half, and I'm going to like put everything I can into this session. And that really did come to the forefront in prep, like you said, because you've just got to nail everything. And that's what athletes do. And people are going to say like, oh, you're not an actual athlete, like you're getting on a stage. But I was like, to those people, I'll be like, do it then.
You try. I would love to see it.
I'm telling you right now, I would love to run 100 meters fast, and I would love to be able to eat the carbohydrates they do. But I've chosen a sport where we absolutely like, we push the limits of what we can do, like naturally and unnaturally. Because obviously there is the untested side of things, which I don't really mind. Like people can do what they want, each to their own. But yeah, I think athlete mindset for both of those, both of your clients would be really important. So less about your clients. I would speak about my clients that are competing, but I don't have any competing this year. Like all of my clients are, well, actually, I can't disclose that on air.
Okay.
There is there is one client. She will listen to this. Yeah, and I was talking about like goals that scare you. Like I think we did a photo shoot last year. She smashed it. to round off kind of a dieting phase. I want her on stage, but I'm not going to put words in her mouth, because obviously she can do what she wants. Like, she's not a
honestly, like, you do have to set goals that scare you at the end of the day, because I think that people undershoot their goals so much a lot of the time compared to what they actually have the potential to do. Like, a couple of other clients of mine, like, I know, like, it's in their mind, but it's just about taking that initial jump and being like, right, I'm going to do it. But like you said, you don't want to put words in people's mouths, and it's just a decision that they definitely have to come to, like, knowing like the pros and the cons, and also that they want to do it.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's
like,
just
give them all the information that they can, all the information that you have in your head, and then it's up to them. Like, if they give you the green light, it's green light. Bit like Squid Game. But yes, that is spoken about your clients. So now let's talk about kind of you and what are your plans now? So I think we briefly spoke about it. So are you competing this year or next year?
It will be next year now, actually. So I came off the Arnold stage, and I was very much like, I think because it was just such a phenomenal experience, and the whole prep actually went as hard as it was pretty seamless to an extent.
If you do say so yourself.
Yeah, basically. But the thing is like, I knew that I straight away, I was like, I want to do it again. I wanted to do it again, like ASAP. But when I took a step back and I thought about it, and I was just comparing myself to the girls in the overall when I got into the overall Arnold's, I was like, right, realistically, if I was to go again in 2022, would I be competitive? Like, would I be to the level that I wanted to be? Probably not. And exactly. In this game, it's just, you have to play the long game, really, because you can't. It's not something you can rush. Like, muscle grows painfully slowly, and you kind of have to just suck that up and deal with it, because at the end of the day, like, it'll happen, but it just takes a long time.
Slow, monotonous.
So it'll be 2023.
Yeah, 2023. I think, like, I'm in the same boat. Like, initially, like, I didn't want to compete for a while, because I knew coming third and kind of being tall and lanky, like, I knew I didn't have enough muscle mass. So I always had the idea that it would be a long off season for me. But then you kind of, I don't know, I almost embrace the struggle now. Like, I almost look back on it and I miss that feeling. Like, do you know what I mean? I miss that purpose of, and that's probably my own fault that I haven't found that purpose yet in my off season, which I have found, but but like that initial kind of that limbo period post show where you're like, you've got to manage your body kind of image issues that you do have, because realistically you wake up every day seeing like new veins and you're like addicted to it. So I was like, do I compete in this year? But then realistically, like, that would make no improvements, because you'd start prepping like 2-3 months, and then you'd be in a calorie deficit, and then all hope of growing muscle would be out the window.
It's out. It's just out.
Exactly. And I think like you said, the long game does bring about the improvements that we need. And like you said, you want to go pro, don't you? Well, I mean, who wouldn't want to go pro? But I think like the potential is 100% there for you. Like, obviously winning the overall at the Arnold's is like, it's not a small stage. Like, I have
not the overall, got into the overall. The winner of the overall.
So you won your class, sorry. The winner of the overall gets the pro card, right?
Yes.
So you want to be pro, because someone who trains at the gym I train at now competed with you on stage. So that was a small world, but
very well.
I need to put on a lot of muscle. Like, I want to be like 90 kilograms on stage, like stage condition, and I was about 85 kilograms on stage this time around, which isn't light at all, really, which is a bit annoying.
It's not light, but I know what you mean, because like, obviously when you are taller, when you're trying to fill out like muscle belly on a taller person, it's just, you just need more of it.
And that's the thing, like, I went for, and that's the thing, it's like, then it's this decision you need to make in your actual prep itself. Like, what look are you going to bring? Like, what strength are you going to play to? So for example, like, I knew pretty early on, but I know how tall I am, so I know I'm not going to be the most dense person ever. So I leant more towards kind of the condition side of things, which might have been a decision that kind of move me down the rankings, because obviously I came in a slightly flatter, I came in leaner than most, but potentially not carrying the level of like muscle mass, or not actually like showing off my muscle mass as well as I could have, because from my like I really think I was flat on stage. Like I don't know how I was flat, but I was flat. Like I don't think I could have carb, like I had 2 days at 700 grams of carbs, no, 750, and then the preceding days were like 400, just to keep me at baseline carbs so I didn't burn any of the glucose that I put in. But honestly, like I think on stage I really struggled to look full, and I do think, like, this is just going to sound like blowing smoke up my ass, but I do think I'm bigger than I brought to stage, which is my own fault. Like if I reflect on it now, and like I reflected on it in the last podcast, I should have decided to compete earlier. So I had like a 20-week prep as opposed to like a 12-week prep, essentially, which is essentially what I did.
Because you jumped into it fairly last minute, didn't you, as well?
So like, it was I had like a client who competed at the BNBF, and I was like, shit, like I love this shit. Like I want to get on stage, like I want to do it. But then the only show that I could get to was the last one before the nationals, which was a busy show, which was good because the standard was high, but I had to go aggressive, and I do think that exponentially like increased my diet fatigue and therefore made my body look tired. Just like the ability to contract like my muscles, like that just gradually went as prep went on, because I was just hammering myself so much. I just felt like I had no nervous system left.
I think you get to that point as well when you're really trying to push to get that condition in a short space of time. You don't really feel like you have time to pull things back at points where you need to.
Yeah, so I had no refeeds, so no refeeds through the whole period, because I wasn't lean enough to be having a refeed. And I thought it's a toss up between kind of refeeding, then letting kind of, albeit it's not body fat, but scale weight go up and then take a week to come down, or I just keep digging. And I chose to keep digging. And I think, again, like hindsight's a great thing. Like I probably could have done with the refeed to top up that look, because around that kind, I think I looked best like 4 or 5 weeks out. Like I was still managing to hold some fullness, but then around that 4 or 5 week mark, like I increased cardio. So cardio was twice a day, weighted steps, 15,000 steps, like things like it went pretty aggressive. And I do think the look I brought to stage gradually got more tired closer to the show. And irrelevant of how like optimal my peak week could be, it's not going to do what a peak week should have done, which is essentially like reduce that fatigue, give you some form of substrate so that you look good. The work was done, but not done in a way that set me up for that peak week, because I think
you probably dug your hole a little bit too deep, like leading up to that show. Yeah. And
I think, like, do I regret that? Like, yes, but like I did bring good condition, and like for my first show as a natural, like I am content with the look I brought. It's interesting because like I really struggled to like fill up my back. Like my front of my body seemed to like fill up okay, but then the back of my body just looked flat. My posterior chain looked flat. And that could be because of kind of changes I made to my training later on in prep, because of the fatigue side of things. But again, like I've got all of this in a massive spreadsheet now, and I'm just going to absolutely nail my next prep. And I want to win a show. Like I do want to win a show. Like it's in my head. It lives in my head rent free.
But that's perfect, because at the end of the day, you've got all the hindsight from the previous season. You know, it wasn't exactly like the best you could have planned out. And I wouldn't have said you did badly at all. No. You still did really well. Yeah. So if you think about it, like with a good off season now, bringing up your weak points and then getting into prep where it's all planned, like you've pre-thought about it, you know where you need to be at X, Y, and Z, then you're putting yourself in like a 10 times better position than you would have previously done.
Exactly. So like experience of the whole process will help a lot, because I just think, like with anything, like time doing something makes it less stressful. So like I'll get to 3 weeks out this time around, well, not this time around, but like next year, and I'll be like, sweet, 3 weeks out, like I'm ready, or like I know what I need to do now, as opposed to, I think I was almost in like just I was just in like fight or flight mode, like just rushing around, like quite stressed about, was I going to be ready? Do I need to refeed? And they're just all things that really you don't need that stress, because you're under enough stress. Like you're trying to train like
stressful enough. Yeah.
exactly. Like, and I didn't need that thought, like, because you start to contradict yourself. You don't think straight. And I do think this massively ties back to having a coach. Like when I prep again, like I will have a coach. Like even if like I send over what I want to do, and that coach then coaches me based on what I want to do, but recommend stuff. Because for me, it's kind of a control thing. Like it's not like I just winged it. Like I didn't just like go, oh, I'm dieting now, blah, 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 blah. I just did that. Like I did plan it out. I did everything, and I will plan out my next prep, but it's that second pair of eyes, and a voice of reason when you don't have a voice of reason anymore.
Or because you literally don't at that point, like you just don't see things the way that they are anymore. And I think
no
that
rationality there, is there?
There's none. And then also just having a coach, just it doesn't have to be like a dictatorship. It's not like you're giving up the control over your prep, but it's just someone there to support you when you need it, which let's be honest, like towards the back end of prep is usually quite a lot.
Yeah, every day, like can I have a hug, please?
Yeah.
Can I have a hug?
Emotional support.
Or just like telling you off. Like, so sometimes you do need to just like get a grip a bit. But then other times like stuff can go wrong, like, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think I am really excited. Like I think prep often, I read a study about the drop off of first time competitors, and I know a lot of people who've competed once and then never competed again. So I think the research is true, and it's a tough one, isn't it? Because for me, like, it's made me want to do it more, and I think that kind of ties into the fact that I just loved bodybuilding training even before like Instagram or anything. Like I was just training as a teacher, just hammering myself like to grow muscle, not documenting anything. So like I just loved it, and I still absolutely love it, which I think will always be there. And I think this 2-year off season, and then I'm going to compete. Well, 1.5 year off season now, compete, and then decide, because in the natural federations, it's a tricky one because some do it by weight and some do it by height. So the UK DFBA, the one that I competed with, do it by height, which favors me more because I'm a heavy bloke. Yeah. So if I go in, for example, like BMBF, I'd be in the heavyweights, but there could be a heavyweight.
But then you're competing against people that are probably shorter with,
with the same, like, do you know what I mean? So I think I'll have to go like UK DFBA, just for the fact that they've got a tool category, which will be beneficial. And then all of us lanky people can just have it out with each other on stage.
In terms of then your next show, so obviously you're thinking 2023 as well. Is that beginning of the year? Is that end of the year? Like,
I'm going to do a few shows. Yeah, I want to do more than one. I think it's a lot of work to work. I just decided too late. Like, it's a lot of work to do one show, because especially, like, again, hindsight's a great thing. Like if that Heart of England show was not the Heart of England, but was like early on in the season, I could have learned from that. And then basically I could have just reduced fatigue into my next show, and I probably would have looked way better. And I do want to I'd love to go to nationals that are at the end of the year. So that's like, it's like late September, maybe first week of October for the UK DFBA. So I'd probably do kind of a qualifier, like early August, preferably before my birthday, so I can kind of have a little diet break around my birthday. And then if I qualified, that is, for nationals, I would then continue dieting for nationals. So potentially 2 shows. And if there's any, because I saw a few people do this year in the natural scene, which was super interesting, just dropping into other shows, even though they're not ready, just to trial their peaks. Like, they're not super far away from stage condition. They're a planned distance away from stage condition, because their planned shows are in 4 weeks, say, but they compete at a show 2 weeks before that first planned show, just to trial the peak. Almost like continue dieting into that first show that they haven't planned, keep everything the same, and see how they do for one, and then just get time on stage. Because I think a big thing for me was like stage presence. Like, I was quite nervous, because I do get like like anxiety. I get social anxiety basically. So what better thing to do than put a thong on and get
exactly. Get a tan and a glaze and get up on stage.
Exactly. So like I was nervous, but I think I've done the hardest thing, which was getting up there, and I did it, and I did my routine, and I posed, and I came third. Like, do you know what I mean? So now I've exposed myself to it. I just think I need to obviously nail my posing. So I'm going to get in posing coaching, because I do think, again, like for any bodybuilders out there, like the way you pose is so important, and I know that now.
Yeah, I would stand behind that 100%. If you do all that work to get yourself into that condition, and that's it's not just the prep as it is the years building that muscle. If you can't display it, then I think you're not going to have it.
Another thing that I mucked up, like, because I didn't have the time, like I was posing, but I didn't really, because I had so much else to do, I didn't really have the luxury of like nailing it, and absolutely owning each pose. And I never really, like, realistically, you should be able to pose and hit your poses with your eyes shut. And I don't think I was there really, especially in some of the side shots, because it is quite complicated. Like, there's a lot to think about. You've got to think of foot positioning, knee positioning, where's your hamstrings, like what are you tensing, and then on top of that, you've got to try and smile, which I just
smile as well.
I just ended up grimacing.
That's always the cherry on top of the cake. That's the last thing to come.
I just kind of like just did that because it was, everything was hurt by that point. But yeah, like there's loads of things that I need to nail, and I think posing will be a massive one. And I know this is something you've drilled with the girls that you have competing, because they are all posing.
They're on it.
Like,
yeah, they're on it.
I think that like again, that time under tension will be so important. Like it will just be natural to them, as opposed to, right, shit, now I've got to do this weird like hair flick that I've never done before. But yeah, like really, really interesting. But
yeah, honestly, this makes a massive difference. I've just told them to wear their heels whenever they're doing their meal prep and just walking around the house.
Hack squat.
The more time you spend them, the better it's going to be. Like, there's nothing there would be nothing worse than, on top of all of these other things you have to do with posing, it's just feel like you're uncomfortable, like just walking. Like, it is so much to it.
Like, I think, like, obviously it's not the most comfortable thing, like going up in front of people and getting your kit off, but it is the sport we're in, and like I just try and see it as like, this is your time. Like, you've spent a lot of time in the gym, like you've pushed yourself like hard relative to yourself, to your own standards, and to the standards of other people. Like, if you're a strong person, you've spent time getting strong, you spent time training, so it's your time to shine. And I cannot wait. Like, talking about it now, like I'm actually like getting, like, you're not nervous, but almost a bit emotional. Like, I want to just go for it. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be so different this time for me, and I'm so excited. But before I start crying,
do you feel like the next time you get on stage, obviously I know you mentioned you get quite nervous, you have that maybe social anxiety getting up on stage, do you feel like you would still have a degree of that, or do you feel like it would be a lot less, as long as you got your posing like to something that you were totally confident with?
I think like I'm gonna learn and see, basically everyone. I watched a lot of shows this year, like online and stuff. Like, all of the best competitors are super confident with it, even if they are not confident in themselves. The minute they get on that stage, they're switching into that mode of like, right, this is it. Like, not like aggressiveness, but self-confidence and how you carry yourself on that stage. Like, you're not just walking to your poses. Like, every second you are there, you are in a pose and you are absolutely nailing it. Like, you're the first one into your each mandatory, you're the first one out of transition into another pose. And all of these things, I do think, like, I'm not a judge, but judges look for it. And if they have more time seeing you and seeing this kind of confidence that you kind of elude or like almost ooze on the stage. And I think I could bring that, because I'm a tall bloke and I'm not light. So like, I do make people look somewhat small. Obviously, if there's massive people there, I won't make them look small, but I'm not a small person. So it's just all about matching like my physique and my confidence in my own potential there. Because I think like towards the end of prep, like my confidence went, like, just because of the body dysmorphia side of things. Like, you're like, fuck, like I'm so weak. Like, I've just got to keep
questioning things. Training is going to get ropey.
Am I going to be ready? Like, and that whole like self-doubt thing really did play on my mind. And I think I did well to be somewhat confident on stage, but I think like I'm going to approach it differently. I'm going to do like way more posing, like get a posing coach, like I said, and then I'm just going to be fully invested in what I can bring. And I think I know I can bring more, which is the thing. Like, I know I can do better. Not that I didn't do badly, but from my own standards, I know I can do
But
better.
you had cards like left on the table basically, and it's just something that
super excited for it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good chat, really. I think like we can round it off there, really. So thank you for coming on. This has almost been like a bodybuilding ramble, basically. So we've just kind of flitted around. We've bigged up some of your clients, so you can go and check them out on Instagram. I might put them in the bio.
Put them in the bio.
But thank you for coming on. And where can everyone find you on social?
So Instagram, it's Gem Centamore Fit, and then obviously I have Coached by Gem, which is a separate like Instagram page that is just starting to get up and running now. So either one of those is fine.
And that will all be in the bio below. So if you do want to check out Gem, like go and check her socials. I'm sure she'll be back on. So we'll probably call this like bodybuilding bamble or something like that.
Something like that.
And maybe we'll actually record the actual start of the conversation first, because we actually said all of our good things before I pressed record. After. But other than that, like
hindsight's a great thing, like everything else.
That's the quote of the day. But other than that, like thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. And we'll have you back on soon.
Yeah, perfect.
See you later, guys.